Hello, good afternoon. A very big welcome to all of you once again to a wonderful session of Mauli's Biology. Today we are going to discuss about a very important aspect with regards to metabolism that is carried out in our body. In the earlier class we had talked about the nutrition. That means the procurement of essential elements or nutrients into our body. This body is an incredible machine that processes so many substances so as to enable this body to sustain life. Now, let us get into the topic without wasting any time. Now, let's begin with the concept of digestive system. Digestion, in fact, is a wonderful aspect that is carried out by the human body. Not only human body, all the living things, especially the animals. Now, let us talk about the definition of digestion. Digestion in one word can be defined as enzymatic hydrolysis. Means the conversion of complex food molecules into simpler, absorbable and assimilatable particles in our body in the presence of water by the activation of enzymes. So, the enzymatic hydrolysis helps the body to absorb, to assimilate the simpler molecules into the cells. So digestion is a wonderful process that is really amazing to say. I am quite enthusiastic and excited to share so many things about human body's digestion today. Now, the capacity of human body here is seen evidently during the process of digestion. Now, let's talk about the digestive system. Human body is equipped with a wonderful digestive system which is called as alimentary canal. The human body has got a capacity to absorb the molecules of food for assimilation and for giving out energy. Now, the digestive system comprises of an alimentary canal. We shall talk about this system in two aspects under two headings: the structural aspect and the functional aspect. Firstly, we will deal with the structural aspect. That means the parts involved, the organs involved in the system. It begins with the mouth. So the alimentary canal or the digestive system begins with the mouth. It is followed by the oral cavity. The oral cavity leads into the pharynx, and then from the pharynx it descends down through a tubular structure called as esophagus. This esophagus descends down, leading into a sac-like structure called as stomach, which is otherwise called as gastric cavity. The stomach again leads into duodenum, a C-shaped structure or tubule. This duodenum is considered to be the beginning of the small intestine. This duodenum leads into the small intestine. The small intestine traverses down to form or to join with a large intestine. This large intestine again runs parallel to the body's diaphragm and then descends down once again to form a rectum and ends up with anus. So, the different parts of alimentary canal are the mouth, the oral cavity or the buccal cavity, then the pharynx, then esophagus, and then the stomach, the duodenum, the small intestine, the large intestine, the rectum and anus. And associated with these, two major glands are present. These two glands are the liver, the biggest gland in our body, and the pancreas, of course, is very wonderful and vital gland that secretes pancreatic juice. Now, let us talk about the functional aspect of the human digestive system. The human digestive system is exclusively a wonder in its function. See, in the earlier class we had talked about the major components of food: the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, the minerals, the salts and the vitamins. These comprise of the macronutrients and the micronutrients. The macronutrients are the carbohydrates, proteins and fats. These are taken in very large quantities. The structure of these is, that is, the molecules are, these are very larger. These cannot be taken or absorbed into the living cells inside our body directly. So they have to be broken down. So the breaking down of larger complex molecules by the enzymatic action in the presence of water in the alimentary canal, that is in different parts of the digestive system, is the functioning. We say this physiology, that is the functioning aspect of digestive system, is unique. Let us talk about the stage by stage digestion in each and every part of the digestive system in human body. Now, the mouth. Mouth comprises of, it is an opening through which the food is ingested. Ingestion means a willful entry. See, generally people take food. That food has to be taken in very nice mood. So it has to be relished. In one word, whenever we see the food, the body gets attracted by its odor, the flavor, the taste. So the body responds. The system gets ready. Actually, to say, we feel appetite. This appetite means, in common English we say hunger. The appetite is triggered by a hormone or by an enzyme called as ghrelin that is released in the stomach. When the sugar levels are brought down in the blood inside our body, a wonderful enzyme called as ghrelin is released in the body. This triggers the hunger or the appetite. So we move towards the food. We are just attracted at the color, the texture, the taste, the smell of the food. We take it into the mouth willfully. That is called as ingestion. So, ingestion of food is the primary aspect. Now, once the food is ingested, it enters into the oral cavity where we find a highly muscular, wonderful tongue. This is responsible for the articulation of food. Again, there are the upper jaw and the lower jaw equipped with 4 types of teeth. So, let us talk about these 4 types of teeth. The incisors, the canines, the premolars and the molars. Incisors are said to be the cutting teeth. Then canines, these are the tearing teeth. Then premolars, the breaking teeth. And the molars, the grinding teeth. So, altogether, there are 4 functions for these 4 types of teeth inside the mouth cavity. The dental formula is 2, 1, 2, 3 by 2, 1, 2, 3. Means 2 incisors, 1 canine, 2 premolars and 3 molars in each of the jaw. So the upper jaw and the lower jaw both comprise of incisors which are meant for cutting the food material. See, whenever we eat a guava, we cut it. Whenever we eat an apple, we cut it with the front teeth. We call them as incisors that are meant for cutting the food. Then the canines, when we eat the chicken or mutton, or when we tear the sugar cane, then the canines which are sharp-edged, the tip of these canines are very sharp. These are meant to tear the food. Then the third one is premolars. The premolars break. Generally, when we eat the nuts, these nuts are broken into pieces with the functioning of these premolars. And the molars, which are located in the deeper zones. These are called as grinding teeth, molars. They grind into fine substance. At the same time, in the mouth itself, we have got 3 pairs of salivary glands. These salivary glands are just beautiful glands which help in the process of digestion, as well the movement of the food into the body, further into the alimentary canal. These salivary glands are 3 pairs in number. The first one are submaxillary. So you find the submaxillary. Then second, sublingual. Lingua means tongue. So submaxillary sublingual, and a parotid gland that is located just below the ear inside into the mouth cavity. So these three pairs of salivary glands secrete saliva, a liquid substance which contains a wonderful enzyme. We talk about that later. Now once we take the food into the mouth, we call this as bolus. The food that is mixed well by the thorough grinding of the teeth, that is the food when it is grounded well with the help of teeth and articulation of tongue. The food then is called as bolus, which is thoroughly mixed with the saliva. Actually, 70 to 80% of the carbohydrates that are present inside the food that enter into the mouth are digested, that is, they are converted into simpler form called as glucose by the action of ptyalin or salivary amylase that is present in the saliva. That is an enzyme. So saliva contains an enzyme called as ptyalin. In other words, it is called as salivary amylase, converts the carbohydrates into glucose. Glucose is the simplest form of molecular structure of these elements. As such, it can be readily absorbed and taken into the blood. The blood takes further into the cells where it reaches the mitochondria and it is oxidized, and that's a beautiful story of respiration, where what we say cellular respiration, wherein energy is produced in the form of ATP. We will discuss that in the further video. Now, to say, I repeat once again, saliva which is produced by the salivary glands in the mouth cavity contains ptyalin or salivary amylase. This salivary amylase converts the carbohydrates into glucose. Then the food then moves into the pharynx and then it descends down into the esophagus, a tubular tunnel-like structure which is muscular. This tube is muscular. It exhibits wonderful one-way forward movement. So the one-way forward movement of food along the track of alimentary canal is called as peristalsis. Peristaltic movement is a one-way progressive movement of food in the digestive tract in our body. I repeat once again, peristalsis is the one-way progressive movement of food in the alimentary canal inside the human digestive system, that is called as peristalsis. So with the help of these peristaltic movements, the food traverses down, it descends down, it travels down, it reaches into the stomach, the gastric cavity. Stomach is a beautiful sac which is lined by means of oblique muscles, transverse muscles and longitudinal muscles. These muscles or muscle strands are highly elastic. These help in the churning of food, the mixing of food. Here itself, the stomach consists of, some glands called as gastric glands. The gastric glands are seen lined inside the walls of the stomach. Actually, to say, the gastric glands release gastric juice. This gastric juice contains majorly three types of enzymes. They are pepsin, renin and lipase. Pepsin acts on proteins, the second macronutrient in the food. These proteins are very large complex food molecules that are needed to be converted into simpler form. These proteins are further converted by the action of pepsin into peptones and polypeptides. These peptones and polypeptides are further converted into amino acids. These amino acids form the building blocks of the body in the new cells. So the new cells, new living cells are formed by these proteins. Hence, proteins contribute for the growth of the body. So, carbohydrates yield energy in the form of glucose. That is, this glucose is oxidized to give out energy. The proteins are converted into amino acids finally. These amino acids lead to the growth of the body. So, proteins contribute for the growth. Then, the renin. Renin is said to be a wonderful enzyme that digests the milk. So milk is curdled, means it is converted into curd. This actually is produced only in small kids. In small kids, this renin renin is a milk curdling enzyme. This is produced in kids, small kids. On attaining an age of 7 to 8 years, the secretion of renin by these gastric glands is stopped, and hence the milk can never be digested directly. It has to be converted into curd, and then the curd will be digested. This curd will have to be further converted into some glucose form or some other element, the sugar form or protein form, and then it is further digested. You will learn that in the higher studies. Now, renin is said to be the milk curdling enzyme. The third one is lipase. Lipase acts on lipids, that is fats. They are the final macronutrient. The highly complex molecular structured fats are converted into smaller units called as fatty acids and glycerol by the action of lipase. So lipase is also released by the gastric glands inside the stomach. Now, coming to the point of here, once again a wonderful quote. The food that is thoroughly mixed up inside the stomach with the gastric juices is called as chyme now. So, we had talked about bolus, which is the food that is present in the mouth before entering into the gut, that is the alimentary canal, into the esophagus. Now, it has moved into the stomach where it has been mixed thoroughly, churned thoroughly by the activation of these gastric enzymes, the conversion of proteins into peptones by the activation of pepsin, the conversion of milk into curd by the renin, and conversion of fats into fatty acids and glycerol by lipase is converted. Now the food is partially digested. This partially digested food that will be moving further into the duodenum inside the stomach is called as chyme. Now the food moves into the duodenum. Here this duodenum is connected to the liver on one side with the help of bile duct. The bile duct brings in the bile juice from the liver. So liver produces bile juice. This is stored in the gallbladder. This gallbladder temporarily stores the bile juice. Bile juice helps in the emulsification of fats. This emulsification process is just conversion of complex molecules into simple molecules by way of breaking the molecules, or dissolving, or the dissolution of greater structured or higher structured larger molecules into simple form is called emulsification. This is done by the bile juice. So they are simplified further. Now the duodenum will lead into the small intestine. This small intestine begins with jejunum. Here the food before entering into the small intestine is subjected to be to the mixing of the pancreatic juice. Pancreatic juice contains an enzyme called as trypsinogen and elastase and pancreatic lipase. This trypsinogen triggers another secretion of enzyme called as trypsin that acts on complex proteins. You know, proteins are of several types. These proteins are tackled, these are converted, these are broken down into peptones and polypeptides and further into amino acids. For that, along with pepsin, the trypsin also works, but this trypsin is released by the activation of trypsinogen. This trypsinogen is present in the pancreatic juice. Then elastase and pancreatic lipase are also the enzymes released by pancreatic juice. Now the food will travels down into the small intestine where the intestinal glands secrete intestinal juice. The small intestine is called as, inside the inner part of small intestine is called as ileum. This ileum comprises of so many intestinal glands on its walls. These intestinal walls secrete intestinal juice. The intestinal juice contains, or it releases, invertase, fructase, lactase, galactase, sucrase, and so many other enzymes that primarily act on the leftover carbohydrates and convert them into glucose, the simplest form of sugars. So, intestinal juice completes the digestion of carbohydrates in the small intestines. So, digestion is completed in the small intestine process. Now, after crossing the small intestines, the food enters then into the large intestine. Before that, a very interesting aspect, it is not just getting digested, but absorbing is also very important, because in the earlier session itself I told you, it is not just conversion, it is even absorption and even assimilation of food. So the absorption is done inside the small intestines. The digested food material is absorbed in the small intestines. So the digested food absorption takes place in the small intestines by finger-like structures called as microvilli. So microvilli, singular is villus. Microvilli are the finger-like projections that are present into the ileum, while the food which is in the liquid form moves in the tract of small intestine. These will absorb the digested food material, that is the glucose, the peptones, polypeptides, and then the fatty acids and glycerol are absorbed. Along with that, even the food major elements called as the minor elements, I repeat once again, the vitamins, minerals and salts are also absorbed in the small intestine. So food absorption is completed in the small intestine. Then the leftover food enters into the large intestine. Exactly at the point of junction of small intestine with the large intestine, we find a vermiform appendix. This vermiform appendix is said to be a vestigial organ. This vestigial organ is non-functional now. But in the beginning, during the process of pre-evolutionary stage, in the early man, as reported by so many researchers, this vestigial organ was functional. But as of now, on advanced studies revelation, we find that this is a vestigial organ. Now the food moves up in the first arm of the large intestine. The inner side or the inner cavity of the large intestine is called as colon. This colon is the cavity that is the large intestine. Now the waste food moves into the large intestine and it again travels down like this and descends down, reaches into the rectum, where we find a fecal sac. Inside the large intestine, while the waste food is, or the material that has to be discarded is traveling, it is converted into feces, that is the excreta. Then it is stored temporarily in the rectum. From there, here the anus is the opening towards the outside, which expels out, which ejects out the fecal material towards outside. So here we complete with the digestive system, the functioning, but we still have to talk about a simple mention. That is, there are three major sphincter muscles present in the digestive system. Here, while talking about the process of movement of food during the peristalsis, at the junction of the stomach with the esophagus, there is an esophageal sphincter, a ring-like muscle that regulates the movement of peristalsis, that is a movement of food. Here we find one esophageal sphincter. Exactly in the stomach zone, we find a part of stomach called as cardiac stomach that is covered externally by heart. The region of stomach that is overlapped by the heart is called as cardiac stomach. The remaining stomach is called as pyloric stomach. There we find a pyloric sphincter. So the esophageal sphincter, the pyloric sphincter allows the food to enter into, that is a chyme to enter into the duodenum. Then finally here the anal sphincter. The anal sphincter is a ring-like muscle that controls the movement of fecal material. Whenever the person feels comfortable, then only he can attend the feces. So the excretion process. So this is about the functioning of the sphincters, and a small mention at the end to summarize. Bile juice. Bile juice contains no enzymes. It doesn't have any enzymes. It contains only salts and pigments. These pigments are bilirubin and biliverdin. So in the examinations or maybe in any type of competitive examination, if at all a question is asked on human digestive system, a very important question that may appear that you can expect is whether any one of the glands, that is a digestive glands, is there any gland that releases juice that doesn't contain any enzymes, digestive enzymes? It is the bile juice. Remember, liver is the biggest gland. Here, bile juice releases the bile, that is, it contains bile salts and bile pigments. It helps in the emulsification of fats. The pigments are bilirubin and biliverdin. If at all the content of bilirubin exceeds, a disease called as, what I can say, the jaundice occurs, that is hepatitis. So this is a very dangerous sign. So here we end up with the concept. Now, to summarize, after listening to this lesson, you are able to answer these few questions like this. Number 1, what is digestion? Number 2, what is peristalsis? What is bolus? And what is chyme? And name the vestigial organ in the alimentary canal or the digestive system. Name the gland or name the juice, digestive juice, that doesn't contain any enzymes. And then finally, what are the enzymes that are responsible for the conversion of various food materials into their simplest form. So here we end up the lesson. I think you have got a good idea about digestion. For the rest, in the next video, let us join once again. Let us meet. Thank you very much.